I think I might start a Facebook group, and hopefully if the folks that I've interviewed are willing to participate in that, people can come in and chat with them, if they're willing. Because I mean, some of the stories that I've heard are so like magical. It's so
Mm,
important for other people to hear. I mean, I think you might have said this before we started recording, maybe, I don't remember, but you led with how there were two businesses before the one that struck gold that didn't go so well.
nope.
What if you had given up after the first one? You just said, you know what, I'm not cut out for this. Let me start sending my resume out.
Yep. I'll even punctuate that point. It was after the second business that failed that we were scrambling for something. And out of the group, that this founder group that at the point we were meeting for 4 years now, is the one who recommended us to a mutual friend. And that landed us our first contract with this third business. And that landed
Okay.
us additional work with the dude that was the investor behind this initial one. And
Mm.
that's who ended up acquiring us. And so, like, long story short, like, I was at the end of my rope. And not only did I not go back to corporate, but it also through, I mean, the serendipity, but also like it's kind of
Well,
higher
kind of.
chance for serendipity when you surround yourself people who want the best for you. And that's what it was. I had enough people who wanted the best for me that
Yep.
even just opening up a single door changed our trajectory.
That is brilliant. Now, I mean, now that you have you know, the hindsight, what do you think happened with those first two companies? Was there just not a market for what you were doing? Were you not properly capitalized? I mean, what happened?
I mean, there's always like a million things for business closure,
Yeah.
but I'll try to boil it down to one that maybe like listeners can grasp. And that is like I was early enough in my entrepreneurial career that I was optimistic. You need that quality in entrepreneurs. We're all optimists, right? Otherwise, we would go home and go
Yeah.
get a job because we know how difficult it is. But
Yeah.
I fell in love with my own idea and I
Yeah.
didn't listen to disconfirming evidence. And so it's kind of hard though, Tasha, because sometimes when you have somebody who says, "Hey, I don't like this," or "That's not for me," you're like, "Oh, they're just not a customer. They aren't our people for it."
Right.
And I was so emotionally embroiled in my first two businesses that I eventually learned, but I learned way too slow along the
Yeah.
way because I wasn't adequately tuned into my customers. I wasn't truly listening. And honestly, I should have, instead of waiting for them to finally volunteer what they're doing, I
Yeah.
was doing some questions, but it was leading questions. And I kind of already had in my mind, what I thought would work. And so now I kind of have this philosophy of like entrepreneurs have to be optimistic, but they have to be paranoid too. The optimism will help you get through feeling like any barrier you have, you'll be able to work through. You may not know the answer, but you'll know that you can arrive to the answer. That's optimism. A
Yeah.
paranoia with looking around every corner and listening to the odd, rejection and trying to learn and understand what's in there that maybe has a bigger impact or intimates something bigger for your business.
Yeah.
And
That's tough.
coaches and mentors and other founders and other people next to you are the only cure because you're in it and you don't
Yeah.
have enough perspective.
Yeah, so one of the things that my coach kept saying to me was, listen, I can give you the best advice in the world, whatever, based on my experiences. However, whatever you think you're going to sell, you need to put it out in the market and see if the market likes it.
Yes.
The market is the only thing that matters, what the market says.
Plus
And
one
you
that.
never know what the market's gonna like respond to or not like, and you're not gonna know until you ask, until you put it out there. And then, how quickly and how well you respond to what they're telling you is going to determine if you can salvage it or not.
Yeah, I
But
love that.
that is tough though.
It is. And there's an art to doing that too. Like there is a concept called MVPs, right? Minimal viable product. It's
Yeah.
a very blocked thing. But there's designing a good MVP actually takes some work too and thought because the what goes into an MVP should be the most critical like assumption or the riskiest assumption that you have and then
Yeah.
you need to ship that as early and fast as possible. So
Yeah.
like if your assumption is training dogs is a good example, that you can do better than the ones nearby, or that people will go from the lodging to dog training. Whatever your key assumption is, I would hone in straight there and use that audience and test right away in the smallest increment that you can. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's overly verbose, but I like the rapid insight acquisition. It's about learning faster.
Yeah,
It is
yeah, yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
putting something out there for learning's sake, not because you're trying to get the dollar. The dollars will come if you learn the right messaging to the right people with the right value. Those will come as a consequence. You
Right.
need to learn faster.
Yeah, oh, and fail faster.
That's it. And one of my favorite things, I love saying this, it
Mhm.
isn't the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. And
Yeah.
entrepreneurs have the ability to move very fast because we don't have a $3 million business nest egg or reputation to like protect. We can just move faster if you do it right.
Right. That's right. There's no red tape. You're the only red tape, so don't be the red tape.
Yeah. And most of the time, it's your own judgments, misconceptions, or just ignorance that prevent you
Yeah.
from either taking big swings or putting something out earlier and trying to get the
Yeah.
learning.
Now, anybody who's watching this who hasn't been on the block, if you could kindly explain like the theory of the MVP.
Yeah, I love that. So, a minimal viable product is actually from a guy named Eric Ries. He wrote a book called The Lean Startup a couple of years, well, now it's been like 20 years ago, and was largely almost a Bible in entrepreneurship for a while. And what it basically is what of your big product or service or gym, what is the most smallest increment of non-trivial value that you can give to a client or customer, um, and can you say no to a whole bunch of good things to
Yeah.
ship earlier to
Yeah.
test this main thing that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
book, I'll give you an example. I love it. In the book, they had this example of, it was a this like Facebook add-on way back when, of when
Yeah.
you would buy something from Best Buy or Walmart, the camera could get automatically posted to your Facebook feed, and people can tell you how to use it, or instances of like how to go about doing that. And they had tested by asking people, and everybody said, yeah, that's a good idea. I'd probably use it. Well, they built an MVP, and the MVP, all it did is when somebody logged into a Facebook on a particular computer, it was
Yeah.
basically just putting in fake posts from their people of, hey, I just bought this Nikon camera, or I just got this TV. And they actually tested this idea. And you know what happened, Tasha?
What?
They hated it.
Oh,
Everybody hated it. They were like, this is what's wrong with society. Now everybody's consumeristic. Everybody's jumping on. I don't care that you got a new car. Like, and what they said was inconsistent with what they actually believed for it. And this company raised money, and they shut it down, and they gave the money back because they said, we don't think there's a market here. And two other well-funded competitors spent millions of dollars and then eventually closed.
ooh.
And they learned a lesson in the first couple $1,000s that they spent, that other companies spent millions of dollars headcount and years to figure out. That's what an MVP is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that is wild. So wait a minute. It was saying like when you use this camera, it was telling you what like the type of camera that they were
When you
using
would
or
buy
what?
something, the whole thought is when you bought something, it would be connected to your social networks, and you could share it with your network, and you could like celebrate together, or like communicate and create like kind of the social component. But what people
Okay.
said, yes, they
That's
really didn't mean it,
gross.
because then it felt slimy in practice. And so again, I loved it. They spent very little and on an MVP, and they literally gave people's
Yeah.
money back who invested, because they're like, you know what? No, not for this one. And they were right.
I mean, an example that I gave to my class the other day was like, remember the very first iPhone?
Mm,
You remember how like kind of
that was
rudimentary it
very
was?
simple. Yes,
I
yes,
don't
it
know.
was. You
I
couldn't
don't
do anything
remember.
with it.
No, I don't think it had a camera. Certainly didn't have video. Like you could talk on the phone. There were a few apps like you could play. Actually, before I had an iPhone, I had an iPod Touch. It was
Yeah,
before, right? So it was like the big or MP3 player that looked like an iPhone basically, except you could only play music on it and then like some limited games. Like the point is, would the iPhone have ever launched if they would have waited for the camera to be perfect, the video to be perfect, right? Wait to have, 5 million games out there for people to play. Like, no, like they had to put something small out there and then continue to build on it. And every time that they release another one, it's incrementally better. But
You know,
because they do this like every year, the difference between the first one and the last one is huge. But
yeah.
like people shouldn't poo-poo at incrementally improving themselves or their product or their business.
Yeah, it was a specialty item. Same thing happened with the iPad. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's just a big,
Yeah.
iPhone for it too."
Yeah.
But yeah, well, one, I do think that yes, they launched, early for that, but it was pretty groundbreaking. I promise you, though, Apple
Sure
does
was.
iterative, small testing with their touch screens,
Yes.
their cameras, every little part of that. They probably test the dickens out of because they want to make sure that they learn as early as possible and not on launch day. And that's what Apple is particularly good at is the
Oh, they're
real human
amazing.
design. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, when my husband got me an iPad for Christmas when the Christmas after my daughter was born. She was born in September. By the time she was 11 months old, she had basically taken over my iPad because when I would nurse her, I would sit there and play this mindless slots game on it or like read the Kindle
Mhm.
app. By the time she was 11 months old, she understood how to navigate around the iPad. Now
Isn't that
that
crazy?
is intuitive, right?
That
If an
is
11-month
insane.
old can handle, you don't need an instruction book for that. If an 11-month old can handle it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a testament right there. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
right. Right. So, yeah, no, of course, like the iPhone was, it blew everybody's mind when it came out. But
Mhm.
if you tried to sell that same iPhone to the people today, they'd say, well, that
Yeah.
one, maybe you should give that one to like your grandma or something, right? Because she only needed to call people and did they even have FaceTime back then? I don't remember, but right, like
I don't
there's
think
only
they
a few
did.
things your grandma needs to do. Give her that iPhone. It only costs
Mhm.
$200 or whatever compared to whatever you would pay now for
Yeah.
like I remember buying my first digital camera when my husband and I first got married, and I think it was like we were like going between like, do we need 2.3 megapixels or 3.2 megapixels? Like, oh my God, fine, let's just splurge for the 3.2. And now the
Yeah.
iPhone is like 5 times more megapixels than that. That's that our crappy cameras these days. So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
it's
entrepreneurs have
amazing.
it harder in that reason because they also, to create a new product or service, they have to be demonstrably better than what's out there now. And demonstrably usually means like 10x better.